Time now for tonight's Power Panel. Democratic strategist Dave Brown, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree, and former CIA analyst Buck Sexton. Welcome to you all.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, so let's start there with this statement that comes from the Trump organization saying, listen, he wanted to dissolve this thing anyway back in 2016 to avoid this conflict of interest, but wasn't allowed to, Buck, until now.
Well, that's because it's useful for people who are trying to make a political name for themselves to go after Trump. Everyone should just be aware of what's going to happen in the year ahead, which is that there will be ongoing investigations of Trump from every angle possible from his political enemies, whether we're talking about extensions of the special counsel investigation or just people that decide that in the state of New York, for example, they realize that this is good politics. In fact, the incoming Attorney General of the state of New York has said that anybody around Trump, anybody related to Trump, they're going to get it. And that is really a perversion of the law, and that's what we're seeing happening here. And look, was the charity run particularly well from what we've seen? Probably not. Is this a major issue? No. Do a lot of folks at home probably think to themselves, there's another charity that I think could use a whole lot deeper of a scrub than the $1 million or so that was left in this one, and that would be the Hillary Clinton charity that was run for so many years, the Bill and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. So this is just an opportunity for them to score more points against Trump. Doesn't mean the charity was run with all the I's dotted and T's crossed, though.
Dave, what do you make of that? Because there are a lot of questions about the Clinton Foundation, potential investigations, and a lot of questions that people have about, once it became apparent Hillary Clinton was not going to become the president, there was a severe drop-off in the foreign donations to that organization, and that begs a lot of questions.
Well, look, Buck just beat me. I assumed it would take 45 seconds to bring up the Clinton Foundation. I think it took him 30. So, Buck, well done. Look, Shannon, these are equivalencies that are just they're not appropriate to make. I mean, you're talking about two very discrete fact patterns, and we are addressing the Trump Foundation on the basis of what the foundation did and the criminality, the unlawful conduct that the Attorney General alleged. And clearly, the foundation's lawyers concluded that the best deal they were going to get was to settle and to dissolve and disband the foundation. And I went through, the filings. It's pretty striking when you look at the kinds of outlays that the foundation made. I mean, really, this is about self-dealing and self-interested donations, if you can even call them that. Buying, an NFL football helmet, dropping $30,000 on two portraits of the president for good Lord knows what. And, of course, really ceding control of the foundation in 2016 to his campaign. I think, frankly, that's the most serious allegation that the Attorney General has made, and she's requested that federal agencies look into that because, as you know, Shannon, it's a violation of federal campaign finance law for charities to participate, coordinate, or otherwise donate
Shannon, if I can just briefly respond. This idea that every time we can bring up an act of selective prosecution that we're just going to be told, well, that's not the issue at hand. At some point, there's a trend. At some point, there's a recognition that certain people of a certain political affiliation tend to get the raw end of the deal when federal prosecutors, especially a certain group of people in the federal government, we could start naming them here, Comey and Yates and McCabe and others were involved in cases. It's not a stretch to talk about the Clinton Foundation because, one, there actually are whistleblowers that just came out in the last few weeks talking about malfeasance at the Clinton Foundation. Two, to your point, it is laughable to uphold that the Clinton Foundation was not a pay-to-play scheme at this point. Either they were doing that or there was no reason for all these people to be donating all this money over all these years to it, right? They decided they didn't care about charity anymore. And this is a very small charity. Why focus on this? Why not let them settle? It's because they want a headline. Well, it's political.
And Tom, in this case, whether it's political or not, the IRS is now getting involved and the FEC potentially because the New York Attorney General has said, we want all these federal agencies to take a look. And it is a relatively small amount of money, but if there's wrongdoing, as is alleged, somebody's got to explain an answer for that.
Absolutely. And look, the fact is that the foundation was going to dissolve. I think, in all fairness, they didn't anticipate dissolving on these precise terms. It's also true that the New York Attorney General, as many state political actors throughout the country, view Trump as a ripe political target, and they will take shots any way they can. I think what we saw happen today with the announcement of the dissolution is that the Trump team basically said, look, we are going to accept a tactical defeat in search of a larger strategic victory so that they don't have to litigate this precise dissolution issue in the court. They don't have to get a court order directing them to do something, and they can basically say to the public, look, this is being done on terms that we agreed to.
Okay, I want to make sure we get you all the way in today on this very interesting not sentencing hearing that happened with Michael Flynn. Professor Jonathan Turley, a very well-known legal mind and well-known to our Fox viewers, wrote this today. He said, the failure to file as a lobbyist for Turkey under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, you may hear that referred to as FARA, hardly makes Flynn the modern-day equivalent of Benedict Arnold. It makes him the Republican version of Tony Podesta, who's enjoying his retirement in his home in the upscale Kalorama neighborhood of Washington, a few doors down from former President Obama and his family. Dave, your response?
I mean, I was struck by the words that the judge used today: disgust, disdain, and he talked about holding anyone who serves in the White House, and especially a three-star general, to a higher standard. So, respectfully to the professor, who I like and respect, I think he's missing the broader point here. General Flynn knew that it was illegal to lie to FBI agents. He testified to that effect today. He confirmed today again on the record that he takes responsibility for his actions, and that is what he's being convicted for. That's what he's pled guilty to, and what he will ultimately be sentenced for. So I think it misses the point to try to minimize, whether there's a different standard being applied. I don't think that's the case. I think again all of these cases are assessed and evaluated on the basis of the fact patterns that are presented.
Yeah,
in this case, General Flynn lied to FBI investigators,
and he admitted today that he knew that he did. I mean, the judge walked him through it. And the judge, his words were, arguably, you sold your country out. This is Judge Sullivan to Michael Flynn. And he said, I'm not hiding my disgust, my disdain for this criminal offense. But
the judge was way out of line. And what our colleague here left out of his previous monologue was that the judge apologized for saying all of that.
Some of that, yeah.
He apologized for the treason comment.
The most egregious parts of it, where he talked about the word treason.
Yeah, which was
because he was under the impression that he continued his work as a foreign agent while he was the incoming national security advisor.
And Buck, he corrected that.
Which was not true. The judge corrected it, yes. So the judge was out of line for part of the hearing today, and I think people were surprised by that. But there's possible for two things to be true. It's possible that Flynn got, again, the rough end of things here. He was set up by the FBI. It's also possible that he lied. These things can be true simultaneously. I think they were.
And Tom, where do we go from here? Because now the sentencing is put off, and today the judge said, if I sentence you today, I'm not going to promise you're not getting incarcerated. Flynn's attorney says, we'll wait.
I think that was the right call under the circumstances, right? When the judge basically says, look, I can send it to you today and get your toothbrush ready, or we can wait a few months and maybe you'll get a better deal. It's not a hard decision as to what you do. Look, I think today's outcome was one that very few people anticipated. I think what happens now is that the spotlight obviously will go on Flynn and the extent to which he cooperates over the next few months, between now and March or whenever he is ultimately sentenced. We know that Bob Mueller already has been very pleased with the extent of Flynn's cooperation. My guess is that will continue. I think the big question is simply, does Judge Sullivan have a change of heart? Does he change his view from what at one point during the hearing he did suggest maybe approaching treason? Could he get to a point by March of next year, where he says, well, maybe it's not so bad that I have to sentence you to be incarcerated? We'll see.
If Flynn had collusion goods, he wasn't going to get to plead to a lie. There's no way.
We got to leave it there. All right. Buck, Tom, Dave, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.